Our today's discussion is on the main ideas of the essay tradition and individual talent. T.S. Eliot's essay Tradition and Individual Talent is considered as the manifesto of Eliot's critical creed. This essay, that is titled as Tradition and Individual Talent, was first published in 1919 in the Times Literary Supplement as a critical article. The essay may be regarded as an unofficial manifesto of Eliot's critical creed, for it contains all those critical principles from which his criticism has been derived ever since. The seeds which have been shown here come to fruition in his subsequent essays. It is a declaration of Eliot's critical creed, and these principles are the basis of all his subsequent criticism. It's three parts of this essay. The present essay is divided into three parts. The first part gives us Eliot's concept of tradition, and in the second part is developed his theory of the impersonality of poetry. The short part, that is third part, is in the nature of a conclusion or summing up of the whole essay. And we have discussed these three parts in our previous videos. Now we will see that what is traditional elements, or what is literary tradition, and what is the significance of these traditions. Eliot begins this essay by pointing out that the word tradition is generally regarded as a word of censure. It is a word disagreeable to the English ears. When the English praise a poet, they praise him for those aspects of his work which are individual and original. It is supposed that his chief merit lies in such parts. This undue stress on individuality shows that the English have an uncritical turn of mind. They praise the poet for the wrong thing. If they examine the matter critically with an unprejudiced mind, they will realize that the best and the most individual part of a poet's work is that which shows the maximum influence of the writers of the past. To quote his own words, whereas if we approach a poet without this prejudice, we shall often find that not only the best, but the most individual part of his work may be those in which the dead poets, his ancestors, assert their immortality most vigorously. And what are the ways in which literary tradition can be acquired? This brings Eliot to a consideration of the value and significance of tradition. Tradition here does not mean a blind adherence to the ways of the previous generations. This would be a mere slavish imitation, a mere repetition of what has already been achieved, and novelty is better than repetition. Tradition, in the sense of passive repetition, is to be discouraged. For Eliot, tradition is a matter of much wider significance. Tradition, in the true sense of the term, cannot be inherited. It cannot be obtained by hard labor. This labor is the labor of knowing the past writers. It is the critical labor of shifting the good from the bad and of knowing what is good and useful. Tradition can be obtained only by those who have the historical sense. The historical sense involves a perception not only of the pastness of the past but also of its presence. One who has the historic sense feels that the whole of the literature of Europe from Homer down to his own day, including the literature of his own country, forms one continuous literary tradition. Eliot realizes that the past exists in the present, and that the past and the present form one simultaneous order. And this historical sense is the sense of the timeless and the temporal, as well as of the makes a writer traditional. Now, what are the dynamic conceptions of tradition and what is its value? Emphasizing further the value of tradition, Eliot points out that no writer has its value and significance in isolation. To judge the work of a poet or an artist, we must compare and contrast his work with the works of poets and artists in the past. We cannot evaluate properly a poet's work in isolation, so we have to put him in the order of the poets before him. And such comparison and contrast is essential for forming an idea of the real worth and significance of a new writer and his work. This conception of tradition is a dynamic one. According to his view, tradition is not anything fixed and static. Tradition constantly changes, grows, and becomes different from what it is. A writer in the present must seek guidance from the past. He must conform to the literary tradition, but just as the past directs and guides the present, so the present alters and modifies the past. When a new work of art is created, if it is really new and original, the whole literary tradition is modified, though ever so slightly. The relationship between the past and the present is not one sided, it is a reciprocal relationship. So the past and present depends on each other. The past directs the present and is itself modified and altered by the present. Now, what are the functions of tradition? The work of a poet in the present is to be compared and contrasted with works of the past and judged by the standards of the past. But this judgment does not mean determining good or bad. It does not mean deciding whether the present work is better or worse than works of the past. An author in the present is certainly not to be judged by the principles and the standards of the past. The comparison is to be made for knowing the facts, all the facts about the new work of art. The comparison is made for the purpose of analysis and for forming a better understanding of the new. And what is the sense and meaning of the tradition? What is tradition in actual? Eliot explains that what he means by sense of tradition. The sense of tradition does not mean that the poet should try to know the past as a whole, take it to be a lump or mass without any discrimination. Such a course is impossible as well as undesirable. The past must be examined critically, and only the significant in it should be acquired. The sense of tradition does not also mean that the poet should know only a few poets whom he admires. This is a sign of immaturity and inexperience. Neither should a poet be content merely to know some particular age or period which he likes. This may be pleasant and delightful, but it will not constitute a sense of tradition. A sense of tradition in the real sense means a consciousness of the man current which does not at all flow invariably through the most distinguished reputations. Works of art. And to what extent a work of art is permanent? Here we will see the permanency of a work of art, and in this sequence the poet says that the poet sorry Eliot says that the poet must also realize that art never improves though its material is never the same. The mind of Europe may change, but this change does not mean that the great writers like Shakespeare and Homer have grown outdated and lost their significance. The great work of art never lost their significance, for there is no qualitative improvement in art. There may be refinement and there may be development, but from the point of view of the artist, there is no improvement. It will not be correct to say that the art of Shakespeare is better and higher than that of Eliot. Their works are of different kinds, for the material on which they work was different. Awareness of the past, the poet's duty to acquire it. So, a poet must have an awareness of the past and he should acquire this awareness. Eliot is conscious of the criticism that will be made of his theory of tradition. His view of tradition requires, it will be said, a ridiculous amount of erudition. It will be pointed out that there have been great poets who were not learned, and further that too much learning kills sensibility. However, knowledge does not merely mean bookish knowledge, and the capacity for acquiring knowledge differs from person to person. Some can absorb knowledge easily, while others must sweat for it. Shakespeare, for example, could know more of Roman history from Plutarch than most men can from the British Museum. It is the duty of every poet to acquire to the best of his ability this knowledge of the past, and he must continue to acquire this consciousness throughout his career. Such awareness of tradition sharpens poetic creation. So, the awareness of the past is necessary to sharpen poetic creation. In this point, T.S. Eliot stresses on the impersonality of poetry and how can extinction of personality be acquired. The artist must continually surrender himself to something which is more valuable than himself, that is, the literary tradition. He must allow his poetic sensibility to be shaped and modified by the past. He must continue to acquire the sense of tradition throughout his career. In the beginning, his self, his individuality may assert itself, but as his powers mature, there must be greater and greater objectivity. His emotions and passions must be depersonalized. He must be as impersonal and objective as a scientist. So, a poet should see things as a scientist. He must be scientific in his views. The personality of the artist is not important. The important thing is his sense of tradition. A good poem is a living whole of all the poetry that has ever been written. He must forget his personal joys and sorrows, and he absorbed in acquiring sense of tradition and expressing it in his poetry. Thus, the poet's personality is merely a medium having the same significance as a catalytic agent or a receptacle in which chemical reactions like take place. That is why Eliot holds that honest criticism and sensitive appreciation is direct not upon the poet but upon the poetry. Now we will see that the how a poetic process is the analogy of the catalyst. In the second part of the essay, Eliot develops further his theory of the impersonality of poetry. He compares the mind of the poet to a catalyst and the process of poetic creation to the process of a chemical reaction. Just as chemical reactions take place in the presence of a catalyst alone, so also the poet's mind is the catalytic agent for combining different emotions into something new. Suppose there is a jar containing oxygen and sulfur dioxide. These two gases combine to form sulfurous acid. When a fine filament of platinum is introduced into the jar, the combination takes place only in the presence of the piece of platinum. But the metal itself does not undergo any change, it remains inert, neutral, and unaffected. The mind of the poet is like the catalytic agent. It is necessary for new combinations of emotions and experiences to take place, but itself does not undergo any change during the process of poetic combination. The mind of the poet is constantly forming emotions and experience into new wholes. But the new combination does not contain even a trace of the poet's mind, just as the newly formed sulfurous acid does not contain any trace of platinum. In the case of a young and immature poet, his mind, his personal emotions, and experiences may find some expression in his composition, but it should be avoided uh, according to the experience. Emotions and feelings. The experiences which enter the poetic process, says Eliot, may be of two kinds. They are emotions and feelings. Poetry may be composed out of emotions only, or out of feelings only, or out of both. Eliot sees poetry as an organization. And what is the intensity of the poetic process? Next, he compares the poet's mind to a jar or a spectacle in which are stored numberless feelings, emotions, etc., which remain there in an unorganized and chaotic form till all the particles which can unite to form a new compound are present together. Thus, poetry is organization rather than inspiration. And the greatness of a poem does not depend upon the greatness or even the intensity of the emotions which are the components of the poem, but upon the intensity of the process of poetic composition. Just as a chemical reaction take place under pressure, so also intensity is needed for the fusion of emotions. The more intense the poetic process, the greater the poem. There is always a difference between the artistic emotion and the personal emotion of the poet. For example, the famous Ode to Nightingale of Keats contain a number of emotions which have nothing to do with the nightingale. Artistic emotion and the value of concentration. How the concentration affects the artistic emotion. The emotion of poetry is different from the personal emotions of the poet. His personal emotions may be simple or crude, but the emotion of his poetry may be complex and refined. It is the mistaken notion that the poet must express new emotions that results in much eccentricity in poetry. It is not the business of the poet to find new emotions. He may express only ordinary emotions, but he must impart to them a new significance and a new meaning. And it is not necessary that they should be his personal emotions, even emotions which he has never personally experienced can serve the purpose of poetry. Eliot rejects Wordsworth's theory of poetry having its origin in emotions recollected in tranquility and points out that in the process of poetic composition there is neither emotion nor recollection nor tranquility. In the poetic process there is only concentration of a number of the poetic experiences, and a new thing results from this concentration. And this process of concentration is neither conscious nor deliberate, it is a passive one. There is no doubt that there are elements in it. It's a passive poetic process which are conscious and deliberate. The difference between a good and a bad poet is that a bad poet is conscious where he should be unconscious and unconscious where he should be conscious. It is this consciousness of the wrong kind which makes a poem personal, whereas mature art must be impersonal. So, in this way, poetry must be an escape from personality and personal emotions. Eliot concludes that poetry is not a turning loose of emotion but an escape from emotions. It is not the expression of personality but an escape from personality. Thus, Eliot does not deny personality or emotion to the poet, only he must depersonalize his emotion. There should be an extinction of his personality. This impersonality can be achieved only when poet surrenders himself completely to the work that is to be done, and the poet can know what is to be done only if he acquires a sense of tradition, the historic sense which makes him conscious not only of the present but also of the present moment of the past, not only of what is dead but of what is already living.